Namanda, 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 namanda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to today's Ohigan service. My name is Jane Naito, and I'll be your chairperson for today. Let's see, we will begin this morning's service with Sambujo on page 24, and then followed by the reading of the Hyobukamon. Thank you.
Namanda, namanda. Hyobukamon. Today, on this occasion of the Spring Ohiigan Service, members of our temple families have reverently come before Alameda Buddha in memory. With deepest reverence and thankfulness for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Alameda, we reaffirm the three homages, Namo Kie Butsu, Namo Kie Ho, Namo Kie So. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Please repeat the Nembutsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda.
We will now have Sutra chanting Sambhu Tsuge on page 79.
Daimon Shojin Sanmai Chie Itoku Muryo Shushokeru Jintai Zennen Chobun Hokai Kujin Jino Kubolaitai Mumyo Yokunyu Seson Yomu Ninno Shishi Jintoku Muryo Ukun Podai Chie Jinyo Komyo Iso Shindo Daisen Ganga Sabun Saisho Obo Karo Shoji Ifugedan Use Joi Kaini Shoji Yose Sanmai Chie Ijo Ose Tobun Fugyo Shigan Isai Kuku Isadayan Keshi Ubud Yakusen Tokuman Muryo Daisho Shunyo Goja Kuyo Isai Chito Shobun Funyo Udo Kensho Fugyaku Inyo Goja Chobun Sekai Ufukage 修仙道光明師匠遠視諸国妙世精進一難量ヨガサブ国土第一公衆奇妙道場朝鮮国領内音二無闘争加藤愛民道南一切実行来生知念少女人が国家楽安穏公文神妙是が心象本願の日力少々欲実法生存知恵無下上領子孫知が信教軽量心死食六十家業精進人寿無下
Please stand for the first gatha in the white book. There's Namu Amida Basu on page 96. And then it'll be followed by the three treasures in the purple book on page 8.
Fortune smiles and flowers
three treasures on page 8. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine. The Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be free from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in the spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teachings. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Please be seated.
Now, Reverend Fujimoto will share a Dharma message with us.
Namanda, 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 Namanda. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Okay, so this is our annual Spring Ohiigan Service. And it's always, today the weather is fighting us a bit, but generally we have moderate weather. And the day and night are evening in length. And so it's usually a very mild time in terms of climate and such. And there's a balanced time of the equinox each spring and each fall. And so it is said that this is a very conducive time to reflect and to meditate and to study. And so I remind myself of that when we come to the Ohigan time and try to do that in my own life or whatever I might be doing. So So for today, I wanted to reflect upon the service, the special service that we had last week at the Palo Alto Temple. And this service was, some of you were able to go. And this is the program from last week's service. And so I kind of wanted to go through that. So much happened and it's very interesting. And will give very good background into how we hold services and a lot of unique elements that were there last week for a special service, and at the same time, many things that were very familiar. So I think it will be helpful for all of us to kind of share. So if you did go or watch it, think about it. Maybe later on, I can ask if you have any questions about what we went through last week, or reflections or appreciations. You can stand up and share them. Okay, so getting you ready, okay, think about that, all right? Okay, so the service was called the 850th Memorial for the birth of our founder, Shinran Shonin, and the 800th anniversary for the Jodo Shinshu teachings. And both of these are the themes of the special service that will be held at the Honganji. So many of our temple members throughout the Buddhist Churches of America are going to Japan later this year to take part in the special service in Kyoto. So, because that will be a very major service, and the district ministers thought it would be a good idea to share our version of that here. Not everyone can go to Japan, so at least maybe they could come to Palo Alto and share and come to know what's going on in Japan, and encourage identifying with Honganji and what's going over there, and not just being our own separate temples, our own separate sanghas, and our own separate individual practices, but to see how we are connected to this overall network. So that was the initial purpose of that. And so many people were able to go, over 200 people, 250 people were there, and so we were very happy with those kind of numbers. So as the service began last week, there was a Gagaku music group playing, and they're based in Berkeley, and so we didn't always have that. It's very unique and special to be able to have this group and ask them, can you come and perform, participate in this service? And so very fortunate that they were able to come. And so Gagaku music, it's usually it accompanies these rituals and actions of the Emperor of Japan and the imperial family. So very special court music in Japan, okay? And it is said that it can be traced back to the year 752. So a long, long time, okay? This Gagaku music, and it's not music that you dance to or anything, but very special court music, okay? And at that time, when it was introduced to Japan, my understanding that we've all seen the great Buddha in Nara, the seated Buddha. It's a huge seated bronze statue, right? Some of us have been there to see it. And so I think they had a special ceremony, and they invited these types of court musicians from China, and they came, and they said at the time they're going to play their music to open the eyes of the great Buddha. So the Buddha sitting there, eyes closed, and they were going to open the eyes with this Gagaku music. So it stayed in Japan from those times, and 9th through 12th centuries, it became very popular, not among everyone, but particularly played for the aristocrats and the royalty in Japan. Okay, so even though it was played for them, the general population had a very much a reverence and a respect towards these traditions. Right? So Gagaku music means elegant music. The oldest form of classical music in Japan. So this was playing by the musicians, and as they were playing, the ministers and the bishop filed in. There's a procession, and they played during this procession. The ministers came forward and took their seats on the onaiji. Okay? And after they were seated, the music stops, and there's a chanting of the Zensho Kada. And so this is a special chant. Maybe not too many people had heard that before, but this is each of these elements we practice when we go to our second ordination. And so we're practicing this. And so as we got ready and prepared our own rehearsals, it's kind of brings back to the minister's memory of all these things that we went through in preparation for going into the ministry. And the Zensho kind of very slow, very deliberate. And so it's very, even every beat, every pitch has to be just so. And I remember practicing this, and you worry as a young student, I'm going to mess up, and the teacher's right there sitting next to you, and you're not in a group, it's just you and him. It's all this pressure that you feel as you go through this preparation. And we're chanting this, and they had a special dais that the bishop came forward and he took his seat. It's kind of like a platform with a little tatami mat there for him to be seated, and implements are there for him to do this ritual, and you can't really see him because his back is to you, but he's going through this ritual. There's a handheld incense burner that he takes from one place and puts it to another. There's a canister that has powdered, very fine powdered incense, and he takes a pinch of this and rubs it, and kind of like a gesture of purification, and symbolically rubbing it on his body. So you can imagine this green powder, kind of like tea, ocha, matcha. No wonder his robe is green. Anyway, he's going through this, and we can't really see it, but this is going on. And one of the good stories that Reverend Bridge and I share, we went through the second ordination in Japan together, and this ritual was practiced. We went to San Francisco Temple because they have the space and the implements to practice this. So the students went from IBS to San Francisco just to practice this. But he was already in Japan studying. And so we were at the retreat center for this ordination, and it's coming up that our turn to do these things. And he had never done it because he wasn't here to practice. I said, "You haven't done it?" So no, what are you going to do? So well, I'll figure it out, I think. And so we're in our room, right? All the little groups have their own rooms. So I put the little pillows here, sit there, and I made a little table. And for the incense burner, this banana, this is the incense burner. And I had these little things from the vacuum cleaner, all these little parts. Okay, these are the things that you need to grab, and so he practiced. So that's our own little story. We didn't tell everybody, but top secret. Don't share it. Right? So anyway, these are the things that happen in the Toraiban. It's called the Toraiban. This ritual that the bishop went through then at that time. Okay. And also, if you notice what the bishop was wearing, very special robes. So this is called the Gojo Gessa, and all the ministers had this on with a white robe, and Gojo means 5-panel okesa. Okay, and so the usual one is just a normal okesa, and this one is a Gojo 5-panel. So the one the bishop is wearing is called the Shichijo Gessa, 7-panel okesa. And it's this huge thing that he needs assistance to put on and everything. And so I think beginning with the 300th anniversary of Shinran's birth, they had these very special ceremony in Honganji, and all the ministers at that time wore these Shichijo Gessa, very, very elaborate. And they had this Toraiban ceremony, and so I think that was considered to be the beginning of these very grand ceremonies in Honganji history. Okay, so, and also at that time, the gagaku music became included in these grand ceremonies. So in the development of our tradition, Jodo Shinshu tradition, you have these very grand ceremonies and this very aristocratic air with the musicians and the robe. And at the same time, it had very little effect upon the daily religious services of the lay people, lay members. Okay, so you have this very deep connection and appreciation of music and the arts that is included in our tradition, and at the same time the chants became much more simpler, and like even chanting the Shoshinge, these were all part of simplifying the practices so that they would become available to all people. Okay. One of the things I wanted to bring forward is in the Zensho Kata that we chanted. We are inviting Alameda and others to come to this occasion. And I've asked Doug to share some thoughts, not only Alameda, but unknown Seishi Bosatsu. So Doug, come on up and share some reflections on your thoughts. Look out, Doug has a whole binder full of stuff.
I'll try to keep it brief, but thank you. Thank you, Sensei, for letting me have a chance just to say a few words. I felt very fortunate to be able to attend that wonderful celebration service, the 850 and 800 joint celebration service in Palo Alto Temple. And I was also really, like, as Sensei mentioned, for him it brought back a lot of memories of what he had to learn. It also brought back for me a lot of memories when I heard that Zensho Kata, that invocation, which seems very rare. Let me just read the words of it first, and I'm sure Sensei, Reverend Dennis is going to have a lot more to say about it, but let me just read what it said, the English translation at the bottom. We first invite and welcome Alameda to enter this dojo and greet the great vow. Accompanied by the Bodhisattvas Kannon, Avalokiteshvara, and Seishi Mahashtama Prapta, with innumerable others who come to this gathering riding on lotus blossoms. Wow, beautiful. what a beautiful invocation. And as I heard that and read it, I read it and thought, wow, I studied this stuff way back in graduate school days. In fact, I was very fortunate. I had become fascinated by Buddhism and wanted to study and wanted to understand the meaning of all the words. And in graduate school in Canada, I was in groups that were actually translating lots of these sutras from Chinese or Japanese into English or whatever. And the names of these two bodhisattvas did come up, and I thought, I should know this. And so I went back and refreshed my memory. Just briefly, I think all of you pretty much are probably familiar with Kannon. The Sanskrit is Avalokiteshvara. You don't need to know that, obviously, but I just refreshed my memory. You can look these things up on Wikipedia. Let me just read briefly. It says, in Buddhism, Avalokiteshvara is a bodhisattva who embodies the compassion of all Buddhas and is the principal attendant of Amitabha Buddha at his right. And so it goes on. There's a lot more, and I think most of you are familiar with the Kannon or Guanyin, and sometimes there's a female representation of Kannon. So if you look it up on Wikipedia, you can find that out. The other bodhisattva who's mentioned is Seishi Bodhisattva. Again, the Sanskrit is Mahashtama Prapta. Let me just read what it says. Is a bodhisattva, Mahasattva, who represents the power of wisdom. His name literally means arrival of the great strength. Actually, when I was translating, we translated it as the gainer of great strength, someone who gets that great strength. Mahastama Prapta is one of the oldest bodhisattvas and is regarded as powerful, especially in the Pure Land school, where he takes an important role in the longer Amida Sutra. He is often depicted in a trinity, so three figures, of course, we just have the one figure of Amida here, but you'll sometimes see figures of three with Amida in the middle. He is often depicted with Amitabha in the middle and Avalokiteshvara, Kannon, on his right side, and this other Seishi Bodhisattva on his left side. So, without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Reverend Dennis. But it was so wonderful to get all this. Thank you, Sensei.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Doug. Nice to hear some of the background on all of this. That part of the Zensho Kata that we were chanting, and just like Doug just mentioned, if you look at our own altar, Kannon is the Bodhisattva. Life, compassion. So this is the same placement of Kannon Bosatsu. And the other, Seishi Bosatsu, on the right, Bodhisattva of wisdom, basically. So the light is wisdom. Okay? So this placement is the same here and at all of our temples. One thing you might have noticed is because it was a special ceremony, they had flowers on each side, candles on each side, and this is called the arrangement with 3, and there's another arrangement of 5 where you have 2 flowers, 2 candles on each side, and we did that previously here, and you might see that at special services when you go elsewhere, but our whole setting overall is relatively small. It looks kind of crowded when you have 5 elements there. So it's kind of my choice that let's not do that here. It just looks too busy up here. So I prefer just going with the 3 at all times. Okay. But it's I think it's helpful to see, you see Kannon and Seishi elements anytime you come here. And let me check. Yeah, I found another translation of the Zensho Kata, different than the one that was in the program, different from the one that Doug shared. But this one says, may the spiritual presence of Amida Buddha, Kannon and Seishi Bodhisattvas, and all enlightened ones past, present, and future permeate this hall to send forth wisdom like flower petals falling from the sky to awaken those of us gathered. So not only on that occasion, every time we chant Sambujo too, the flower petals falling, it's the same thing. We're welcoming the wisdom of the Buddha. Okay. So one thing, I was talking earlier about how the chants became much simpler, and one of the things I wanted to reflect upon is the Namo Amida Butsu, right? And this is our 6th character, what we say quite often at our services, Namo Amida Butsu. And I had just done a family service at a home recently, and they had a scroll that had Kimyo Jinjippo Mugiko Nyorai. So where'd you get that one? Right? And this is a 10-syllable myogo, same as Namo Amida Butsu, but 10 syllables. Kimyo Jinjippo Mugiko Nyorai. Okay. Homage to the Tathagata of unimpeded light pervading the 10 quarters. Okay. So Shinran Shonin had appreciation for that one and Namo Amida Butsu. And there's a 9-syllable one also. Namo Fukashi Giko Nyorai. Okay, and he liked that one too. And later on, at the time of Renyo, he liked the 10-syllable one, but he chose Namo Amida Butsu. And he wrote scrolls and passed them out to these different temples, and So in his own writing, these scrolls became available, and many, like even he was joking to his friends that probably no one has made as many omyogo as I have. And so he passed these out throughout all these temples, and they thought it was a special to receive this gift from Annual Shonin. So they would put it up at their temples. And so Namo Amida Butsu became the preferred reading, okay? The omyogo of preference. So good thing, right? It's a whole lot easier to say, right? So good thing we don't have to say Kimyo Jinji Po Mugi Konyorai 3 times every time. Accessible and easier to provide it to everyone. He is known for writing these letters, collection of letters, the Gobonsho, written in very simple Japanese, passed them out throughout the countryside of Japan, and everyone could read this. You didn't have to be a scholarly person. And so everyone was included. And so as you look at the development of our school of Buddhism, more and more shifting from this aristocratic side to a more grassroots movement, but keeping both sides, right? Not one or the other preferred. They used to sit differently with the aristocrats or the monks sitting up in higher chairs, and the lay people had to be on the outsides. And Renyo, I believe, Renyo said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Everyone can sit together. And so they changed the seating and the styles of chants. They started to chant the Shoshinge. To us, it seems long and hard, but that is easy to read, quite simplified. And they use that as their morning chant. And here, even more so, chanting, people are very familiar with our shortest chants, the Junirai, the Juseige. And we do this because of comfort, basically, to make it accessible and easy to do, make it easy to fit into our service times and all of these things. And so it becomes more fitting into our lifestyle as everyday people. So, you see this simple chants, simple melodies, and everyone's being able to participate, and you see the basic elements that there's no distinction between priest or lay people, sex, social position, intelligence, none of these things. Open the teachings that are open to all, okay? And this doctrine of wisdom and compassion, welcoming everyone, come as you are. I think it's a very warm, inclusive message, and very different. Lots of times in other religions and other forms of Buddhism, you get these elements of fear and doubt of your own practice, and the practice is to gain some type of favorable placement in the afterlife, okay? And that is not the message here. And everyone is welcome at all levels. Come as you are, come as you are. So I think we're able to see so much of that element, so much of that history as we went through this special service last week in Palo Alto. You'll hear more about it as people come back from Japan, take their trip to Japan and come back from Japan. Probably last week I saw the editor of the Wheel of Dharma. He was there taking pictures. So there'll be a write-up in the Wheel of Dharma as well of what we went through. Not everyone was able to go, but it was available virtually as well. But so many of our members did go. They had panel discussion, so the people who are primarily Japanese speaking were able to hear some of the Dharma in their own language. And my mother was very happy to have gone there. And she told them, she's been in the United States for over 70 years, but she thought her English would be getting better by now. But she reverts more and more to Japanese and not to English, right? And so she's so appreciative that they had this Japanese portion available to them. And later on, I know others that were there told her, thank you for saying that. So, there were much more people in the English side, and 3 of the ministers gave an English presentation, and all of this was a very nice opportunity. And even if you were not able to view it, just to share reflections of it here today, I think are very nice. So. It's about having been there last week. Something to share with our Sangha members.
There was a.
You have to come up because they can't see you. You have to come up to the mic. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can speak loudly.
Yeah, please come up. This is Joyce. So, there are people virtually that they will appreciate seeing your face and be able to hear you a little more clearly. So if you can, whether you're new or old timers, come up to the mic and show your face, share your voice.
It's not really a reflection of last week's service, but sort of a addition. Reverend Koyama, for his monthly memorial service for the March, he actually went through sort of the progression of the kodomo, the robes that the Buddhist priests, starting from India. And then he also went through what you would probably see at last week's service. So I thought it was a very nice introduction. I was actually looking for the Zoom site at that point, and then I came across that. So it was his monthly memorial service for March, and he was giving an introduction as to what you would see last week. So if you missed some of it from last week, you can go back and look at his sermon and get a little more insight too. But I thought the whole service was really nice.
Great. Thank you very much, Joyce. Any others? Yeah. Dennis, please come up. We'll have a couple more, I hope. But Dennis Terao is coming up to share some thoughts.
Thank you, Sensei.
You can take your mask on.
Yes.
We can hear you better.
Just a reflection is that from Sensei's sermon today, and referring to Kannon-sama, when I was living in Switzerland, after I retired, I was doing volunteer work at this hospice, and when I first was introduced to the hospice, we had to go through a training session, and the name of this hospice is the Maison de Tara, Tara's house. And it was a hospice for patients or people who were terminally ill, and so just to provide comfort to them in their last days. But in the introduction to Maison de Tara, the name Tara was a reflection of Kannon-sama, the goddess of mercy. And it was through our training sessions, we learned that the founder of this house, this volunteer, this Swiss woman, she is a very, very devout Buddhist, but a Tibetan Buddhist. And through experience living there and through my contacts, then I learned that there were many Buddhist temples in Switzerland and throughout Europe. And then I was introduced to several Tibetan Buddhists. And after the invasion of China and taking over Tibet, there were many, many Tibetan refugees living in Switzerland, and they did then themselves reestablish their Buddhist temples throughout Switzerland, throughout Europe. And I had the opportunity to visit some of these temples in France and in Italy, and it is quite predominantly members being French or Italian, but these temples are quite large. The Buddhas within these temples are also quite large, and there is a significant number of monks and nuns who are also predominantly European. And so it was, for me, quite heartening to see that Buddhism is really not strictly an Asian religion, but really it is a religion for all. That's thank you, Senator.
Great. Yeah, just listening to Dennis's reflections, I had no idea he had such an experience, but thinking of the pebble thrown into the pond, who knows what gets touched from all the reverberations. Any others would like to say something today? Special chance? Maria? No, thank you? Okay. How about Jane? Anything else? No? Lenny? No?
Maybe I have one thing to say. I do have one thing. I think one of the things that impresses me the most when I go to these things are when we are all chanting together, and it's like I'm used to chanting at home because of my father, but when you're even here, there's something about so many people chanting together. But then when you go to these even larger events and you hear everybody chanting at the same time, I get goosebumps. So that was a very big, and it happens all the time, but anyway, that was a big impression that I had.
Great, thank you, Lenny. Yeah, someone else? Yeah, Yumi. Great, please come up.
I was really surprised. I think a lot of you were also when the bishop did a Dharma message with a puppet show. I was floored, frankly. I was very happy being with children, and I'm sure there weren't a lot of kids there, probably in our Dharma school class or whatever activity afterwards. There were probably about 15, 20 kids. I don't know if there were more than that some of you saw in the audience. But it was really surprising to me, and then I kept waiting for the adult sermon or Dharma message, and there wasn't one. I was wondering if you could share any insight into how they decided that. I was really happy. I wanted to catch the bishop later and thank him, but because our kids were pretty enthralled with the puppet show. But again, I was very surprised.
Yeah, we asked them specifically to provide a talk for the Dharma school age, and I think all the ministers were familiar with Freddie the Frog. Yeah, Freddie has visited many sites, many temples, and we thought that would be a very nice occasion. there were a lot of elements, and we wanted to kind of restrict the time, and it'd be nice to have a adult Dharma talk and a Japanese Dharma talk too, but where are you going to draw the line? So, and just judging from what I could hear, from the audience, from the Sangha members, all the adults were laughing at the right times. They were paying very good attention to Freddie, so I think it fit. It worked very well. So, yeah, we were very happy to have him share Freddie the Frog with all of us. I know in the Northwest he came up and Kakihara Sensei thought, wow, that's just great. Look how involved everyone gets. So he decided to do something like that. Not similar, same. Exactly, the same. And I mean, he got the same frog. And what did he name him? Freddie. Why can't you pick a different name? You can't have two Freddies. So anyway, they could have, I think they did. They had like a dueling Freddie and a talk as the two of them were there together. I thought I would come up with this big, ugly, frog-eating troll. Anyway, today, very happy to hear different voices in this service, and we're going to conclude this Dharma talk here. Thank you very much. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda.
Thank you, Sensei, for your Dharma message and for explaining last week's service, and for all of you who participated as well. We're going to please stand for the next gatha, and it's in the white book. It's Arigato, verse number 2 in Japanese and English on page 36.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Please be seated. Thank you. Just want to have some acknowledgments and thank you for everybody who helped out today's service, setting up the altar, and of course Reverend Dennis and all of you who participated in today's Dharma talk. Any newcomers today? Oh, hi. Can you stand up and introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Anish. I've been coming to the Palo Alto and last session, and this is a little bit closer. I figured I'd come here, and so this is great talk, and yeah, we hope to get it.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Any announcements? I see Gail here, and she's taking RSVPs for our Hanamatsuri Otoki. So if you haven't signed up to have lunch after Hanamatsuri service, please see Gail today. And